So good evening, everyone. Tonight being not just the lunar observance day, but the exiting of the Vassa rains retreat period, then it's traditional that the junior members of the community or all the non-Ajahns give Dhamma talks. So without further ado, Anagārika Justin is the first talk.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammam Sangham Namasami. All right. Speak from the heart. I'll try. Not sure what's going to come out. It's strange to think that my voice is coming out of little speakers in different places other than here. Yeah, it's kind of scary. Just sit in a room with a microphone. But at the same time, I feel super safe here with everybody around, actually. And being at Abhayagiri is, feels quite amazing. I was thinking today as I was walking around to be able to do things here that in the world I would be too afraid to do. Be afraid, it'd be dangerous in some way, like go crazy. But here it's encouraged to experiment with different things. Yeah, there's a camaraderie here. It's quite nice. Sometimes I think about all the skeletons in the room. It calms me down, actually. It's probably why I'm thinking of it now. I like to do a lot of element contemplation. For some reason, it kind of jibes with my personality in a way that is really soothing. It's one of those contemplations that I didn't really expect what to get out of it, but I was trying different things and it kind of blurs the edges of myself from the rest of the universe in a really nice way that is, I guess it's hard to feel alone when we're all in the same soup of elements. There's a line from a poet, a monk, and the line was water being poured into water, and it has a really nice feeling to it. Or sometimes I think about cream being poured into milk. No, that doesn't make sense. Cream being poured into like tea or coffee, and it has that swirlingness, and sometimes the environment can feel like that, and other times I feel like Anagārika Justin. It just feels, exhausted or over-caffeinated or embarrassed about something. And 4 minutes. The first time I ever remember seeing a monk was in the movie Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, where Ace Ventura had a traumatic incident in his life, and then he went off into these mountains, and then people were trying to find him, and they went up this like huge stone staircase, and I just remember being at least my memory now, is the monks, it's like, what? I didn't even realize that the human beings were out doing something. Like, what are they doing up there? Yeah. I keep thinking of an image, a memory burn from the experience of Metika, where we were at the mortuary, and we're all in this room that was lit, like really mellow, and it was quite nice. And I think most of the community were there, and there was all these monks standing around Metika's body, and it just seemed really primal because everybody was kind of like getting close and leaning forward and looking, and it reminded me of, like, I bet that's happening right now with elephants or chimpanzees or dogs. Like something is like really mysterious is going on. That's like, I don't know, Metika gave me such a gift, and I didn't even know her, really. The way she died was a gift. So I can only assume the way she lived, she must have done a lot for other people. Sometimes when I'm breathing, I think about all of the creatures or the people that are breathing in right now. Like billions of people breathing in with me at the same time and breathing out, in sync or out of sync. There's a comedian who said, when I go to shave, I say, I'm going to go shave too, because I assume somebody else on the earth is shaving as well. I'm supposed to talk about Dhamma talk. I've never given a Dhamma talk. It's quite nice being a junior member of the community, because the older monastics really hold things down, and a lot is expected of me, but at the same time, I'm expected to make a lot of mistakes. Like right now, part of me is afraid, and another part of me isn't afraid. Sometimes when I'm calmest, I feel like there's actually nothing to be afraid of. And it feels much more true than my fears, which can be quite gripping feeling-wise, but there's something about them that just seems dreamlike. It's kind of a strange thing where I sometimes have a dream that will get to a point where the fear hits a certain level, and then I just be like, I'm going to wake up. It's like, wait a minute, where did that come from? I just decide, be like, no, I'm out. It's like a part of me knew that I was dreaming the whole time, and it was an option just to open my eyes and then feel the relief of being in bed. I'm really grateful for being here in the Anagārika year. The Anagārika half year has been an incredible gift that really, other than my parents keeping me alive and being so patient, nothing compares to it. All right, Hart, anything else? We're at 8:10, 10 minutes. First Dhamma talk, 12 more moons. I hope I'll still be here. I feel warmth for the people here, and yeah, we're all in this together in some way, I'm guessing. Yeah, we're all in the same place. Of course we're in it together. I offer that for reflection.
Sadhu. Thank you, Anagārika Justin. Anagārika Trevor.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Buddhaṃ dhammang sanghang namasami. Good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. It might be a little unusual receiving a Dhamma talk from behind, but thanks for your patience and attention. I did get a heads up on this Dhamma talk, so I reflected a little bit about what I might talk about during my 2-week retreat that recently ended. And I thought the most useful thing would be to just offer some hallmarks or realizations that I've come to in my personal practice, and maybe they'll be useful to you, maybe they'll be helpful, but if not, take what's useful and leave what isn't. Start with a phrase that I always say to myself and share with others and reflect upon. And I think about a lot here as I spend my days, which is something I heard from a Zen teacher I used to practice with, which is the practice can be called radical honesty. And for me, what this has meant is that as I go about the practice, I have to be very honest with myself about where I am in this world, what time, what place, what my karma is, what are the things that I need to address in my practice, as opposed to what I might be idealizing. A lot of time, one of my biggest inspirations is a Japanese monk named Kodo Sawaki. He's kind of like, you could call him the 20th century or modern, I'm using the wrong lingo. You could call him the Ajahn of Japan, but a little bit different context. And similar to Ajahn, he wandered up and down Japan, practicing meditation and living a very simple and humble life. And sometimes I think I'm Kodo Sawaki, but I'm not Kodo Sawaki, I'm Anagārika Trevor. So what that means is sometimes putting down that idealization and realizing that what might be the most beneficial or skillful objective of my practice may be something totally different than what I've read in the books, what I've heard the Ajahns talk about, what happened in Kodo Sawaki's life. It could be something as coarse as not being greedy when I go through the meal line, or just trying to get up on time. But I think being honest with ourselves about whether or not we are being idealistic with our objectives in practice can be really helpful, because in my experience, trying to be my ideal Dhamma practitioner, some super monk that can speak Thai, speak Pali, always sleeps outside, knows all these outdoor skills, etc., etc. It's not really a realistic goal, and it actually causes a lot of pain and suffering, exacerbates suffering. So yeah, that's one point that I always come back to, is a radical honesty, just being realistic about where we are, what our needs are in the practice, and starting there. Which reminds me of a mantra that I like to say to myself, which is practice where you're at. There was a gentleman, a guest that came here who seemed to be quite stressed out all the time and had a lot of health issues, and came up to me several times apologizing and just I was having a hard time going through the routine of the monastery, but I also shared that mantra with him, practice where you're at. And it's just like whatever you can do, wherever you are, it's enough as long as you keep practicing. Another important point that I reflect on and that I've come to realize through my practice is to actually take the advice of your teachers, your trustworthy teachers. If you find your teachers trustworthy and worthy of your confidence, I think it's really important to reflect upon and consider if we're actually taking the advice that our Dhamma teachers give us. I first learned about this actually in the world. One of my university professors at the beginning of the class went over the syllabus, and she said, if you just do everything that I've outlined here, if you just do exactly what I say, I guarantee that you'll end this class with an A. And so I decided to just do exactly what she said, and sure enough, I got an A. And I remember when I first got here, I was in tea time and listening to Ajahn Chinda, and he made a similar remark about this, that like a lot of people keep bringing up the same topics, and it could be that they're not completely hearing what the teacher is advising. And in my experience, it's been really helpful to just take the advice of the Ajahns here. And again, that kind of corresponds to idolization. A lot of the times when I think my practice is not going well, I'm aspiring to be some ideal and not taking the advice of my teachers or my peers. So even though it sounds kind of boring or unappealing, or maybe I know I don't like to be told what to do. If you have a trustworthy teacher, I can attest that taking their guidance is taking it seriously and reflecting upon it can be quite helpful. Probably the last point I'll share, I think I might be out of time, is something that a Vietnamese monk that I used to live with, who I consider one of my teachers, told me is, in his words, you should to be flexible. If it's not obvious what he meant, he just meant be flexible. And it sounds so simple and so obvious, but at least in the Anagārika life, being able to set yourself down in any given moment to be flexible is quite helpful in the practice. It also reminds me of a famous Zen book called Opening the Hand of Thought. And just the title itself reminds me of how to be flexible. It's like in the course of our given life, we have these preferences that we are holding on to, and they come into contrast with reality sometimes. So I guess what I'm talking about tonight is idealism. We have some ideal, some plan, the way we want things to go in the moment. And it's like a hand clenching onto something. And a lot of the time, the most useful thing is to just open up the hand and let go so that we can be flexible and address what's going on in the moment. So I think I'm out of time. I'm not sure, but inviting me to talk about Dhamma is like inviting me to drive a car. You might have to tell me to pump the brakes every once in a while. So those are some reflections I have to offer for you, and thank you for your time and attention.
Anagārika Kevin.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammāṃ Sanghāṃ Namasami. I can relate to Anagārika Justin was saying, it's scary. It's scary to be up here, and then I can also relate to, there's a feeling of being held, and that it's okay. What comes to mind is to reflect on the kind of the difficulties and stress that I've had in just life and in practice, and then kind of those things that have helped with that. And it's nothing original, it's just kind of the Four Noble Truths, and to try and relate them to my life. And sometimes it can think that, or sometimes it can seem, I can think that, I've had I've had so much suffering and had more difficulties or stress than other people, and I'm pretty sure it's not the case. I think we all have stress and difficulties, and I'm no different. It's kind of on a spectrum, but we all got it. And sometimes suffering can seem heavy. And I like the idea of kind of like a spectrum. For Lumpur Panya, talk about it as like discontent. Ajahn Jeff translates it as stress. I remember hearing a talk by Lumpur Sumedho. He's like, we talk about all these different ways of describing dukkha, and then we just come back to suffering to describe it. And for myself, I haven't really, until coming to the teachings, it wasn't really clear that it could be something helpful to look at. And it's really, I can really get bogged down in it too. Especially when I'm taking things personally and just, kind of thinking about myself, which is still a lot of the time, but it's gotten a bit better. Probably the most amount of suffering I've had in my life is kind of around, for a period of about 10 years of my life, is quite a bit of partying, some alcoholism and drug addiction, and slipped into that. And it's kind of peppered throughout my family, and I got into recovery and simultaneously got a lot more interested in like meditation and the Dhamma and practice. It's been really helpful, and I remember connecting with my first teacher around the time that I sobered up, and it took a few years before I got to a monastery. I remember being scared of monks. Ajahn Siddhanta actually came to Grand Forks, North Dakota, I think it was like 2006. And I remember being there as a little weekend retreat, because my first teacher had been a monk in this tradition. And I remember he was there in this room, and I didn't even go up. I was terrified. Like, I was scared of him. I was like, it's a monk. What do I say to it? Like, I just didn't, I had no, petrified. And I don't think I ever talked to him. Like that first kind of interaction, I just kind of stayed away. And then I found monks are really nice, actually. So I can still have fears that come up in regards to them through my conditioning and whatnot. But I was able to sober up through recovery and got into more into meditation. Came out to Abhayagiri and had an initial connection, and I got to connect with Lumpur and Lumpur Amaro and other monastics here, and as a really good seed was planted. And still continued to have difficulties and stress and suffering, and I still do today. Still have stress and difficulties and suffering, but the more that I connect with this practice, following the advice of teachers, following the advice of the Buddha, when I do that, like relax, focus on the breath, focus on the body, try not to take the mind so seriously. It works. It's kind of like a slogan in recovery, it works if you work it, and I found the same in the Dhamma. Like if I'm practicing, if I'm putting these things into practice, it works. And then when I don't, my mind is not well left to its own devices, and so I need this medicine to to help it out. And I can see that it's true in my own life that I'm most stressed and experience the most kind of dis-ease and discontent when I'm wanting things to be different than they are, or I'm just wanting, craving, caught up in the liking of something, and when it's painful or uncomfortable, my tendency is to want to push it away, to have some sort of criticism come up of myself or something outside of myself, some sort of blame. And if I can just come back to the present moment and to the body, then it's helpful, or whatever the meditation object is. It can be helpful. And as far as the end of suffering, I think it's possible. I mean, I get this sense that it is possible. Although those little moments of not suffering, I think we all can see, which leads me to believe that there's probably an end to this whole thing. And I think the end of this whole thing really is if I'm kind of coming back to if I'm taking the advice of the Buddha and my teachers and others to kind of practice this path of trying to not harm people, have a sense of integrity or morality, that the more that I do that, the better my life seems to go on whatever level I'm able to do that. If I'm willing to put in some time and effort into meditation, that always helps on a given day. And if I'm willing to kind of think and reflect on some of these things that are suggested for us to think and reflect on, it helps. I can take it for granted. Most of the time I do take it for granted. I think, Abhayagiri and, Lumpur and Ajahn Ñāṇiko and Lumpur Cha and Lumpur Mon, and all the way back to the Buddha and all the teachers and communities and people that have put in these great strides and great efforts. And I can also take it for granted all the support that comes from people that support this. But it seems like there's a happiness that comes up when I try to be grateful, and it does. At times it seems hard to be grateful, being in the Anagārika, because it just seems like it's just hard. It's just hard, but I guess it's good to be able to see that suffering and to be able to go from there and try and remedy it through the help of others and the Sangha. It's a really good thing that's going on here. So I'll leave it at that for reflection. Thank you.
Thank you, Anagārika Kevin. Next, Tan Sampanno.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ dhammāṃ saṅghāṃ namasāmi. I remember first time I came to Abhayagiri, I was coming here as a Mahayana monk, and must have been about a little over 6 years ago.
And I think maybe on my first day I came and been here for a little bit. Maybe it was my first or second stay, but I'd only been here for a while, and then I came here at this time of year. It was the end of Vassa, and I remember attending the Pavarana night and just being very impressed with all the talks all the junior monastics gave, and over the years I've felt that same feeling. It's nice to hear from everybody, and nice to get all these different perspectives on Dhamma and on the monastic life, the spiritual life, from so many good people here. And I always get the feeling that everybody is just very, very sincere and truthful, and so it's always uplifting. I think for myself, I just feel very blessed to have found Abhayagiri. Feel very blessed to have found the Dhamma in general, but I always reflect on what a good and supportive and positive place this is. It's definitely not an easy thing to try to commit one's life to the Dhamma and focus on it as one's sole priority in life. We have to do other things. We work. We have community life. We have meetings. All these different things come up, but it seems like the more time I spend here, the more it sets in that what can sustain me in the long run, or what really makes life worth living as a monk, is just how much I'm progressing or learning or developing in the Dhamma. And if I get off course, if I lose the plot, get sidetracked for a time, there's definitely a feeling of not being satisfied, not kind of receiving the nourishment that I'm looking for from growing in the Buddha's teachings. I remember being really impressed at everything, kind of in the same line of what I'm talking about now, just everything about Abhayagiri. And there's this phenomenon that some monks will talk about when they go to a new monastery and everything's so great. There's kind of the honeymoon period. And then after a time, you kind of see some of the other sides as well. But I remember just being super impressed, but then receiving the advice or the encouragement from a senior monk that everything can be great at a monastery, but ultimately those are supportive conditions, but one has to do the practice oneself. So the supportive conditions of Kalyanamita, as we say, spiritual friendship, it's very helpful, but hearing the Dhamma is helpful, studying the Dhamma, living in a very harmonious community is incredibly helpful. But it comes down to, at the end of the day, whether or not I'm putting in the effort. And so one of the things I guess I've been realizing that one of the hindrances for myself that I've kind of noticed little by little is just kind of laziness, and it's something we probably all experience often when we're in a retreat setting and there's other people around, there's a schedule, we have that kind of group energy that pushes us. But a lot of the practice here, and it's a dimension of practice that's quite helpful for this reason, is we go back to our kutis, we have the whole afternoon alone, or we're on retreat for 2 weeks, as we do in the summer Vassa period. We have a lot of time to direct our practice with our own efforts, and in those times when nobody else is watching, nobody's telling us what to do, that's kind of where laziness and the lack of energy can really hinder me. And so I appreciated what Ajahn, or what Anagārika Trevor was saying, his advice about. It's quite simple. Just we've all heard the teachings. We know what the Kruba Ajahns say. We know what our teachers here say about putting in effort, focusing on the formal practice. But it's easy to complicate things and get distracted. There's a chant that we sometimes do. Often we'll do it after the all-night sit on the Wanpras, and I think it's a collection of different teachings that come up in the suttas. It's something like the reflections on striving according to Dhamma. For those of you who have seen it in the chanting book, you'll know it's a very kind of inspiring chant. And there's a place in there where the Buddha says something like, the lazy person dwells in suffering, soiled by unskillful, unwholesome states, and great is the something like great is the benefit or the fruits of the practice that he misses out on. And then the next line is, the energetic person, though, lives happily, freed from evil, unwholesome states, and great is the gain that he achieves. And so it's just pointing to the importance of energy in our practice, and that although an important dimension of the practice is letting go and relaxing, letting go of tension, on the other side we do have to energize ourselves and encourage ourselves, put forth energy in those actions that we know are helpful and are beneficial to ourselves. And so that's something I've been thinking about and trying to emphasize in my practice these days. Yeah, so it seems like a really good occasion that we're all gathered here today, and happy for everybody that we're all here practicing the Dhamma, and I wish everybody the best in the practice. Thank you.
Sadhu. Thank you, Tan Sampanno. Next is Tan Yasa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammam Sangham Namasami. It's great to hear from the monastics that we already heard from. And it's quite impressed with the Anagarikas. As you heard, how they spoke and what they spoke of is a testimony to them being a pretty mature bunch. And that's the monastics here at the lowest level. So, Vassa 2022 is almost completely over, and it went by really quick. Although time is kind of weird in the sense that someone was saying that it's like long days, quick weeks. So, anyways, I feel like it went by really fast. And one of the highlights, actually, of the Vassa was, for me, I attended a Spirit Rock family retreat program. It's just like a 4 or 5 day residential retreat with like 30 plus families. And I was accompanying Ajahn Pesalo, who's now, by the way, Ajahn Pesalo. So yeah, I got to reconnect with him. And yeah, and it was just a really nice experience, kind of getting transported into a whole nother world. A number of monastics here kind of know what I'm talking about. Luangpur has led a lot of these family retreats at Spirit Rock, and Ajahn Ñāṇiko. But yeah, it was just a kind of really warm experience where everyone was just so kind of kind to each other, and of course on their best behavior. But it just, got me reflecting. It's like, wow, yeah, really, like the world, at least parts of the world, can function like this, where things like being kind and responsible and ethical and generous are upheld and like actively practiced. People saying nice things to each other constantly. Super supportive, encouraging. There was this one experience that the last night there was a talent show where the kids would come up and do some kind of skit or music thing. Or, one little girl, she was very little. It's like maybe 6. But I mean, I remember is like her body, just a very little body, little face, big smile. And she came up to do her thing, and she was going to recite this poem on love. And she gets up there, and super nervous, like a number of us are tonight. And she looks at her paper, the poem that she wrote, and she's like, I can't do this. Yeah, I can't read what I wrote. And then Ofosu, one of the Spirit Rock family retreat teachers, a number of people here know him. Really great man, and Ajahn Chunda has referred to him as a mensch. He came up to her and was like, okay, I'll help you read what you wrote. We can do this. And she said, no. I can't read this. I gotta go. And then he, super supportive and kind of skillful, said, okay, well, you could just go back to your seat and kind of read it over again, and then if you want, you can come back up and recite your poem. And so she did, and but you got this sense that everyone was like holding like a really safe, kind of inviting space. Again, similar to how it feels tonight, right now, even with being live streamed. I hope that's the case out there. And then she did. She came back later on and recited her poem on love. And in many ways, that's what it's like here. Just that, we're all on our best behavior for the most part. But it's just like a really safe, supportive, encouraging place to explore and experiment with developing the good. So I just came out of a 2-week retreat, and that's further time to explore and experiment, but in a different way, less community activity and more experimenting with solitude and formal practice. And I feel very grateful to have that time. It's, for me, invaluable. To have that time. And right before going into retreat, we had a late patimokkha because it was right after the Buddhist bicycle pilgrimage. And then we got a call, Ajahn Ñāṇiko got a call from one of the lay supporters that was looking after Mettika. And kind of said to him, like, look, it's time, you should come. And it was like, poor Ajahn Ñāṇiko, I mean, because he's doing so much already, had a long day, Buddhist bicycle pilgrimage, he chanted the patimokkha, and then this lay supporters, kind of as it's getting later in the evenings, asking him to come. So he was like, okay, maybe tomorrow morning, like early tomorrow morning. And then Ajahn Chunda was kind of trying to assess and kind of get a sense of how close Mettika was from dying. And Ajahn Chunda was relating how with his father, he remembered hearing this kind of labored breathing. And Ajahn Ñāṇiko looked it up, and apparently it's called the death rattle. And it's just like this, kind of disconcerting sound of someone really struggling to breathe. And so he's telling the person looking after Mettika about this, and he says, yeah, she's doing that right now. Do you want to hear? And so he put the phone to her face, and sure enough, we heard the death rattle. So that was a clear sign. Okay, time to go. So a number of us went to where she was. And as we were in the waiting room trying to check in, another person looking after her came out and said, we think she just breathed her last a few minutes ago. But one thing that really stuck with me was as we were walking, so from the waiting room to Mettika's room where she had just passed away, as we were walking, we ran into a couple of nurses, and one of them said to Ajahn Ñāṇiko something like, "I'm so sorry." And Ajahn Ñāṇiko responded, pretty quickly and confidently. He's like, no. It's normal. It's totally normal. And then 5 seconds later, I saw Mettika's dead body. And it seemed normal. I have seen a freshly dead body before, so maybe that was part of it, but yeah. It was just simply a very still, dead body. Yeah, I could go on, but I've already been speaking for 15 minutes. So I'm going to stop. But I wanted to congratulate Ajahn Ñāṇiko for becoming a Mahatera and being in his 20th Vassa, 20 Vassas. And also Ajahn, now Ajahn Sudhīro, congratulations for 10 years in the ropes, up and coming. Well, you've been a great monk for a long time. Now, I'm sure you'll be a great Ajahn. And Lungpor, how many Vassa are you? 49. So next year's the big one? Okay, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Yasa. And next up is Sāmaṇera Obhāsī.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammam Sangham Namassāmi. Good evening, everyone. It's been a wonderful series of reflections so far. I think it really does speak to the strength of our community, the breath, the goodness that is here. It shines through the people that live here, through their model behavior and through their words, their expressions. They paint pictures. People of sincerity, people of integrity, people that are worth being around. It kind of feels like the mind has this ice-breaking phase, kind of a thawing period where thoughts need to turn into a slush, into water, from this kind of hard, unbroken form, becoming malleable, becoming workable. As the words pour out, the thoughts pour out, they become descriptors, colorful language, things that can relate, that can communicate. I think of words a lot of the time as handles. To borrow a philosopher's term for it, are these handles that they represent our ideas, our thoughts, our feelings. It's always a surface level representation. So what I've been really impressed with so far in the people that have spoken have been their colors. The words are tokens of the practice, representative of what's been building, what's been growing underneath. And that shines through brilliantly. I count myself extremely grateful to be here. It's a rare tradition where everyone's a teacher. I feel like there can be so much talk and raising up of gurus, charismatic leaders, easy to follow, easy to get lost, but with a really solid community, full of diamonds,
It's hard to get lost. I really like looking. Thinking about this recently, I really enjoy looking inside and being like, what's going on and how can I see this? How can I be with this? In a way that's completely honest, completely real, completely loving. It feels like the ability to hold something with firm equipoise, but also imbued with these soft, loving edges that allow room to bend, to shape, to contour. There can't just be a rigidity to how we see things. There has to be that malleability. And I think that comes with love. Everything is suffering and we see things clearly as they are. It's all black and white, squares and rectangles. I think that's where the Brahma Viharas seem critical. I've noticed for myself that whenever the practice gets geometric and pointy, kind of linear, putting the pillow of metta, karuna, and mudita, placing that pillow around the edges, it makes it much more comfortable when you smack your face against the pillow again and again and again. Instead of hitting all the hard edges, you hit something a little softer. I find the idea of geometries and clearly defined points and very clear planes, I find them extremely appealing, but they're not real. They don't actually exist here. Life is very messy. So it feels like trying to carve these abstract geometries into the mold of life, trying to fit them where they don't really fit. I found there can be a lot of tension there. It's strange sitting here. I've never felt so cognizant of how my body relates to my thoughts. I'm noticing that as thoughts are forming and potentials are forming, my body tenses up in really random places. Like I just had a thought that I could express, and there's a little muscle in my left calf that tightened. Like, why are those connected? I have no idea. But, I imagine that over time, as we establish these patterns with the body and the mind, for long periods of time, long periods of mindfulness, 49 plus years of mindfulness, that hopefully we can start to see how that tension that we hold can be let go of and held with more pillows than sharp angles. As the chance to speak in front of community doesn't come across very often, I'd like to express really deep and extreme gratitude to both the community that resides here and specifically the leaders of our communities, the Ajahns, Ajahn Ñāṇiko and Longpa Pasano. And like I said, everyone that's here, because I feel like everyone is a teacher in some way. We all have our strengths. There's so much to learn from. I'd like to give a really warm, heartfelt sense of gratitude to this place and the energy that it's provided, because it's inexpressible how special it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Sāmaṇera Obhāsī. Next, we have Sāmaṇera Tejasāro.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. So I just got out of a 2-week retreat, solitary retreat today, and we'll see what comes out of me. But, I had a lot of time for meditation and reading and rest and recovery. Just taking a break from all the work, all the activity. And it's always a reflection when I get time for more solitary practice, a reflection on how much I use activity and work to distract myself. And that came up again during this 2-week retreat. It kind of seems like when you enter a monastery that those things sort of you leave behind in the world, but the clothes change, of course, and the patterns come with you. So it was refreshing and also very unpleasant to have a lot of the backlog of things I've been maybe not dealing with come up on this 2-week retreat. And as unpleasant as it was at times, it was just generated a lot of gratitude for this place. And a lot of the monastics tonight have spoken about safety and space and specialness of the Abhayagiri, but I'm going to talk about it again. I found just being in my own head during the retreat time, running through old memories or fears about the future or anticipations or even old pleasant memories that I can't relive or can't really hang on to. I found the level of space around and the safety around revisiting those memories and seeing how they would come up and persist for a while and generate a level of longing or wanting to distance myself from something or embarrassed about something or yearn for something. To go to the end of that is just something I never really had a chance to in my life before the monastery. It's not to say that you can't do that. I just never afforded myself the opportunity to do that. And so that was something to be grateful for. And it came upon me many times, sort of culmination, going through a pleasant or painful experience during meditation, during the quiet times. And this gratitude would come up for the opportunity to be here in the space. It got me thinking about gratitude also. And, a lot of times I appreciate it when it comes up that way in a spontaneous manner. Seems like something just sort of gives birth and all of a sudden there's gratitude and that's wonderful. And then at other times I wonder why gratitude isn't coming up. So I started to play with making gratitude something to cultivate. And that's nothing new. I think I've heard that many times. I just never really picked it up. So one of the specific things I worked on, kind of a difficult practice, was being in the meal line with my alms bowl. And usually, embarrassingly, I'm standing there, I'm waiting for this thing that happens where my bowl's empty and then all of a sudden it's filled with food, and then I put that food in my mouth, and I feel usually pretty good. I kind of regret the past couple of years I've just been sort of doing that, and unmindfully. I don't know if it was just reacquainting myself with some of the minor training rules that the monks follow, but a few of them are receiving and eating food appreciatively. And again, I've known those for maybe a year now. But so I finally started just a little bit, just sort of waiting in line and seeing my empty bowl, and slowly it would be filled with food maybe I'd never seen before, food that was familiar, and started to think about all the times I had to cook for myself, or I had to be in the kitchen as an Anagārika and had to cook things, how much effort was involved, and how much attention, consideration that went into making sure that dish didn't get burnt, or at least palatable, hopefully tasty. And then something started happening, and by the time I'd get done with the line, I found that I was thinking about what others were doing, so that I could be nourished and continue on with utilizing this place and the space that is afforded to me to face the things that are difficult to face. So I've never really approached gratitude that way, where it was something that I had to take, like raw materials, physical object, a mental thought, and then time and sustain sort of consideration for keeping that thought afloat, and then to have gratitude come up out of that slowly, sort of out of this like kind of murky sort of soup. It was something new, but it was very comforting that I can do that. That's available to me. And it gave me a lot of hope too, because I usually only had a relationship with gratitude in terms of spontaneously arising. You either had it or you didn't have it, and a lot of, I guess, I don't know if it's self-hatred or it's sort of criticism maybe, if, well, you're not grateful, or this is another sign that you don't appreciate what's been given to you, and because it's not just coming up for you spontaneously. So I appreciated that little shift in attention, receiving food and then eating it appreciatively. And I really appreciate everyone here, and this really is a safe, supportive environment. That's about all that's coming up for me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Sāmaṇera Tejasāro. Next up, Anagārika Mike.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammāṃ Sanghāṃ namasāmi. Just kind of letting the nerves settle a little bit.
I have this weird thing where I've been thinking about giving this talk over and over again. I just keep letting it go. It's like I'm rehearsing the talk in my head, and this is what I'll say. This will be great. This will really help people. People will like this. And then it's just like, no. Now's not the time for giving a talk. Just let it go. So, yeah, I've given many talks already, and they all sounded really great. They all did. But that's kind of one of the problems I kept running into with these rehearsal talks. It's like I'd get going about some topic and then I'd realize, actually, I don't know anything about that topic, but I just want to sound like I know what I'm talking about. I guess maybe there's like a fear that I don't know what I'm talking about, or maybe people won't think highly of me if I don't know what I'm talking about, or maybe like a kind of a fear that I haven't, realized anything, or that I haven't gained any fruits from the practice. And so how does one speak? How does one talk without giving into pride and arrogance? And also lately I've been kind of looking inwards a bit more, just trying to see kind of what's underlying some habitual patterns that keep coming up. And it has been quite uncomfortable, and it's been just revealing some kind of, I don't know, just nasty stuff. Just all the things I never wanted to look at and swept under the rug. It's like now they're all rotten, but they're still there. So kind of dragging them out, and so it's like, one of the things that seems to be in there, kind of pervading, is this sense of kind of self-hatred, not wanting to be the way I am, or not wanting things to be the way they are, or kind of feeling like I'm not good enough, or like everything's not good enough. It's like however I feel about myself, it also kind of applies to the world around me. So most of the time I notice more easily how I respond to the world around me. For example, I'll habitually criticize others about really quite trivial things. But the mind it wants something to criticize. But then when I look a little deeper, it's actually myself I'm criticizing. And so that's quite an uncomfortable place to be, kind of criticizing others, criticizing self. And so then there's this habit to like cover that up with kind of puffing myself up and being kind of arrogant and prideful, and like, no, I'm good enough. Like, I know what I'm talking about. So yeah, when it comes to something like giving a talk, it's like, how does one give a talk? How does one say things that are going to be beneficial to people when there's all these kind of these defilements underneath the surface? Like, what can be said that will benefit people when I'm still struggling in the practice, and I'm still bound up with the defilements. And yet, there is something there that's not defiled. And in a sense, that's what keeps training. That's what keeps looking at these defilements. That's what brought me here. And so, at this point, there's this element of faith and element of trust that there is something undefiled. And there's like a way of kind of allowing that to be what is expressed, not the defilements. And one technique that I tend to come back to is just looking at what the mind is doing, not trying to do anything with the mind in particular. For myself, sometimes when I try to do something particular with the mind, it's like I'm trying to cover something up, or I get too focused on it, or I grasp it, and it turns unwholesome. And so I find just looking at the mind can be kind of like a helpful reset. It's like not trying to control the mind or make the mind in any particular way, but just what is the mind doing? What's it getting up to? And sometimes there are things happening that I don't really want to look at. And just looking at it is like, okay, that's what's going on in the mind. And seeing what's going on in the mind, then there are things to be done. There are things not to be done, and there are things to be done. And I think the real crux of it is, do I have the courage to actually do what needs to be done? Do I have the courage to refrain from doing that which is not to be done? Do I even have the courage to ask myself, is this something that should be done or not done? Or am I more just operating on a more habitual, instinctual level? So as I've kind of been looking inwards, one of the questions that ends up coming up is, what am I doing here? Why did I come here? And the reason that I came here, am I fulfilling that reason? Am I doing what I came here for? Like, am I really giving it my all? Am I giving it my best shot? Am I doing my very best? Or am I just wasting my time? So that question, am I doing my best? It's like, what does it mean to do one's best? It seems pretty clear that it doesn't mean following some ideal of what I should be doing. Or if I was doing my best, this is what I would be doing. It's like, in a sense, doing my best is learning how to let go of those ideals and to just wholeheartedly do what needs to be done. And I think that wholeheartedness is really a crucial aspect of practice. Kind of giving oneself completely to the practice and making practice permeate all aspects of one's life. It's like, yes, there's formal meditation practice and that needs to be engaged in. But how do we bring that into our daily life? How do we apply that to having a conversation with somebody about something mundane? Or how do we apply that to brushing our teeth? How do we apply that to uncovering things that we don't want to look at? or when we notice we're being lazy, when we notice we're acting out of defilement, then what does it look like to do our best? If we realize we haven't been doing our best, then how do we do our best in that moment? And so this kind of wanting to do one's best and really give it a good go, so that there's no doubt that I didn't try my hardest. That has a certain energy and momentum, but then with these kind of underlying things of self-hatred, criticism, inadequacy, and then also like pride and arrogance, it can be quite tricky what's actually good to do. And there doesn't seem to be any kind of way, like a cookie cutter way of doing things, like you can just apply that every time. But it's more just really paying attention, really looking at the mind, seeing what's happening, and then being willing to do what needs to be done based on what is seen. So at this point, all that is clear to me is that there's more work to be done. And thank you all for patiently listening.
Thank you, Anagārika Mike. Next up, Sāmaṇera Sivako.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham namasami. So, Anagarikas are a really hard act to follow. Very sincere, really genuine. It's really good to hear. Everyone's talks really, and I can echo that gratitude for Abhayagiri and the space to look at these things and the practice. Gratitude for our teachers. I have to apologize for my inability to, or incompetence as a teacher. I can't really teach anything. I can only repeat. I can just repeat what the great masters have said. Yeah. The practice is actually really ordinary. We get 2 weeks to have the space for a solitary retreat, and I spent a lot of time in solitary. I wasn't even coming down from the meal to look at food, trying to just have a bowl of instant oats and leave it at that. I wasn't working, just meditating and seeing what worked and didn't work, and actually just kept going back to emptiness. There's a well-being that comes up naturally when we stop propping up a self and a me and a mind. Just finding a trick that clicks for you to put down the khandhas. Found a bunch of tricks. There's a Zen master, Hung Po. He would use a koan. What were you before you were conceived in your mother's womb? And just as a thought experiment, you go to that, and we're using our perception for this, so maybe it's a little cooling. It's not the big nibbana that we're looking for, but it's these little coolings I think are good to follow, these breadcrumbs. And that little cooling is, this space and this emptiness, and then well-being comes up. And I've done a couple 2-week retreats here, and And there's ones that have just been dukkha, 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 looking at dukkha. And this, not to grade or compare these things, but it was just not propping up a self and an I, and was and then slipping off that at different times, and just, oh yeah, here's that dukkha. That's a little less than before, but yeah, just putting down the khandhas, and we have a feeling that comes up, and we perceive the feeling, and then we proliferate on the feeling, and our volitions, these things are conjoined, they're not disjoined, so our volitions get involved, and we actually will ourselves to keep living moment after moment, and these mind moments are actually, this is all a trick. I like one teacher used the metaphor of lights on a runway, and they each light up, and it looks like a line going off into the future, and we see that, and we go, oh, look, there's a line, but it's just we perceive this continuity of self because we keep propping it up, and the mind's so fast, and it's actually just a light turning on and off, and then a light next to it turning on and then off, and then the next light on and then off. And our whole life we've been propping that up, so it has so much momentum. It can be quite scary how strong it is, and we're very convinced by it. Yeah, even now, I'm going to have to give a talk, and a little nervousness comes up, and there, it's actually there. I'm propping up myself. I'm scared of something, and then subsiding, and then comes up again. And it's okay, there it is. So we watch that, and so we know, and we let go, like our teacher Ajahn Chah has told us. And there's definitely fruits from the practice to find these little coolings, little nibbānas, and whereas sila and all that, whereas sila and emptiness, we prop up a I and mine, and we can create a lot of problems with that. Nations go to war over I and mine, so it's nice to spend a lot of time trying to connect this, like, okay, I'm reflecting on emptiness, and where is sila in that, and often never get a sense of that. So just exploring these different things, picking them up, looking at them, and seeing how important sila is. I've had a practice on and off at different times in my life, kind of use the practice as a medicine when I needed it. Oh, it's working, okay, put that in the medicine cabinet, put it away, I can function in society. But then, getting to a point in my life where, okay, I was doing something important, that's important, I need to go towards that, and have, that's what's fulfilling in my life. And a lot of the Zen and stuff that was available when I was younger, it's just, I didn't get a real sense of the Sila teachings from that. And coming to this tradition, it's been really nice for me to be able to try to, just to join those and see that these things are, there's a lot of overlap in the Buddhist teachings. And again, just having Abhayagiri here to be able to explore all this. It's a very, very precious opportunity. And look at the clock here. I don't even know when I started, but I think maybe I'll leave it there. There's enough said.
Thank you, Samaṇera Sivako. So, on that note, Rakkhito is the next.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. Oh, hello everybody. I'm Rakkhito. This will be my fourth Vassa coming up. And somehow I don't think I'm going to be talking all night, like Ajahn Ñāṇiko was just referring to. I almost feel like crawling up and just taking a nap on the mat right now, but I'll give it my best shot. Well, this is my first Vassa back here at Abhayagiri in 2 years, and it's very good to be back at the monastery that I came to first, and well, it's the first monastery I've ever been to and ordained at, and I'm just very grateful to be back here again. Last year I spent a year away in Thailand and spent the Vassa at Wapananajat up in Boon Wai, which is in Pakistan, up in the northeast of Thailand, and certainly that was I got to travel about a bit. It was kind of a wonderful opportunity that I had, and another monk here, Cittapālo, we both got to go. It's something that's available to a third year Vassa monk to go and spend a year away somewhere in a branch monastery, and it's a great opportunity to see how things are done in other monasteries. And then the year before that, I was up at the Pacific Hermitage for the Vassa there, up in White Salmon, Washington, by the Columbia Gorge in Mount Hood. Very beautiful setting. And and coming back here this year, and we got back into country. I think it was the beginning of June, and it was just very, very pleasant to come back and experience just the physical comforts of California, and no humidity and nice dry heat, and beautiful forests here, and it's just such a wonderfully quiet place too to practice, and with lots of wildlife to be seen, and the community, which is just continues to be very harmonious, and just seems to be like one hand washing the other, and kind of seamless. So it's been pretty pleasant coming back. And well, today was out on Pindabat. There's one of our Pindabat routes leaves right here from the monastery, goes out to Fry Vineyards area there, and we've been invited many years ago to come out and receive alms out there, and it's a long tradition, and it's kind of has that Thai feel, just walking out of the monastery and just starting your route right from there. And today on Pindabat, we saw Daniel Fry, a longtime friend and supporter, and he asked the monk that I was with, Tan Sudhīro, soon to be Ajahn Sudhīro, here in just a few hours, and myself, a Dhamma question just regarding like what has been useful for, basically what's been useful for us in practice lately. I don't remember his words exactly, but when he asked me this, the first three things that just kind of came into my mind was gratitude, and humility, and what was the third one now? I'm drawing a blank. Gratitude, humility, and I think I'm a little tired forgetting what the third one was. But anyway, these they just popped up: gratitude, humility, and whatever that third quality is, I can't quite recall right at the moment. And what I realized was that, and it was true for me, these qualities, these wholesome qualities, these kusala dhammas, help support my practice, help brighten my mind states, and keep me from slipping into unwholesome mind states, negative mind states. But as we were walking away, I started just realizing, just reflecting on the words that these three words, these three qualities that I talked about with him, that they're not really isolated in any way. They're connected to a whole lot of other wholesome qualities, and you can't really have them isolated. And because there's, you're going to be grateful for something. It requires, being mindful, and you need mindfulness in all these qualities, and so what I just realized, they're just so connected, so conjoined, that you could just pick any three qualities really, and they're just going to be. You're going to get to the, you're just going to end up with a whole lot of good things, and it's just part of this Buddhist teaching. These teachings are just like this, where it's this huge tool bag of just different things that you can use, different techniques that fit different moments or different hindrances that may be coming up, or different reflections, and there's just so many different ways of coming at the Dhamma, and that it's geared towards just being accommodating to so many different personality types, or tendencies, habits, whatever your history may be, and there's something in the teaching somewhere that will resonate, and it's which brings up a lot of gratitude for me, because I know, for me, when I first picked up reading the Pali Canon when I was a layman, I was just marveling, like most people do, just marvel at the genius in the teachings, and the profound truth in the teachings, and then that gratitude comes up again. So in my mind right now, there's so many different ways I could go, and I don't confuse which one should I pick up. Well, I'll just pick up that gratitude again, which is so helpful for me. For me, as far as my history goes, reading Pali Canon, being quite moved, and knowing this is something I want to apply to my life. It's something I want to do, and I'm someone who has this is just my fourth Vassa, but I'm 61 years old. So I'm someone who's ordained late in life, and which it really isn't that common. But fortunately, discovering Abhayagiri, hearing Lopapasno's talks online, and just realizing just how much they resonated with that the Pali Canon that I read, and that these teachings were still alive. It wasn't something that died off, 1,000 years ago. It's still, there was somebody out there still, who was still teaching in this way, and I was just blown away by it. I came to visit, met the monks, and just seeing, people, monastics trying to live this life that the Buddha, created for us, to practice the Eightfold Noble Path and, work towards, freedom from suffering. Nibbana is still a living thing. It's not just not just something that we can read about historically. And then just the fact that, that someone at my age, was able to still ordain, and it was, quite amazing to me. So, as and as time goes on, it's not always peaches and cream. It's a hard life at times, being a monastic. I'm not an enlightened being, so there's going to be, easy days. There's going to be hard days, but when the days really get very hard, it's good for me to reflect on why did I come here? That feeling I had the day I found out that I was accepted to become an Anagārika. I was in tears. Because I wasn't quite sure it was possible, being such an old guy. But they, I felt like I just caught my flight. I was just about to miss, and the door's about to shut, and I got on the plane. And you sit down in the seat and you just feel like, I did it. I'm in. And so it's always, for me, it's always a good place to go back. It's like, well, when things get tough and I start becoming kind of like the Thais would call a lung ta, kind of like an old monk who ordained late and is just full of views and doesn't want to do things the way everybody else is doing it, and is crotchety and all that. And sometimes I get like that. But it's always good for me to reflect on those, coming here, and just the feelings of gratitude and humility, deep appreciation for what was going on here, and all that. And you just think of all the hard work that's gone into bringing this Ajahn Chah tradition to the West, to America and Canada and Europe, and God, now it's in South America. It's a lot of dedication and hard work, patient endurance, and a lot of compassion. And I'm feeling really kind of sleepy right now. I'm kind of just blabbering on right now a little bit, but thank you, everybody. Thank you, community, for continuing to put up with me and having me here, and much appreciation to the lay community for the total open-handed generosity in so many different ways, and I'm always grateful for that. Very moved, and thank you, everybody.
Sadhu, thank you, Tan Rakkhito. Two more. Tan Sudhīro.
Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammāṃ Sanghaṃ Namassāmi. Okay, good evening. Yes, quite a special night for the monastic community here. Tonight is the end of the 3-month rains retreat, and every year this is the one night when all of the junior members of the community are able to come up and share any kind of reflections that they have, and it's also kind of the point at which we can consider ourselves one more year older in the practice. And so for myself, then, this is also quite a special night, because tonight is the ending of my 10th year as a monk. And so that tends to be quite a milestone for us. There's a few different points: 5 years, 10 years, maybe 20 years. These are different kind of milestones in the life of a monk. So for me, it feels quite significant and quite special. And because of that, then I've been thinking a little bit back to the past 10 years and just the different things that I've gone through, and thinking about that period of time, I'm reminded of this story that Lumpur Pasano likes to tell about the great Zen master who was asked to describe his life of practice, and his answer was one mistake after another. And I feel for myself like this is a very nice description of practice in general, but certainly for myself, looking back at the past 10 years, I can recall almost countless mistakes, failures, so many situations, almost countless situations in which I wasn't as good as I wanted to be. Things didn't go as well as I had expected or that I wanted them to. Having difficult interactions, having things blow up in my face, embarrassing myself, failing over and over again. And when I look back at the past 10 years, then that is very much the flavor of my experience. But I feel a lot of joy reflecting that it hasn't been wasted, it hasn't been in vain. I've always tried to pay attention over these past many years, and through the ups and downs and all of the extremely difficult situations, and dealing with my weaknesses and problems, and failing again and again, feeling like perhaps I'll never really overcome these things. I've always paid attention to each situation and the suffering that's arising, and I've always tried to investigate and question, why is it like this, and what can I do about it? And even though we may go through many years of feeling like we'll never really be what we want to be, and feeling like things aren't changing, certainly the nature of the defilements and nature of our weaknesses and problems is that they're impermanent, like everything else. And the more that we understand the causes, of our problems, then the more that we can wear them away. And we all desire to be perfect spiritual beings, like the great meditation masters, completely at ease all the time and happy and confident. But that's really not where we begin, and most all of us begin at the opposite extreme, being incredibly unhappy all the time and lacking confidence and lacking ease, not being in tune with the world. And for myself, this is very much my experience arriving here 12 years ago, with an incredible amount of suffering and with the desire to want to learn what causes that suffering and how can I be free of it. So reflecting back on the past 10 years, then I definitely feel that I have gone through and experienced almost countless mistakes, one mistake after another, but I'm very happy that I have made these mistakes and that I've tried to continue to learn from them. And I'd be very happy to spend the next 10 years, 20 years making more mistakes, and because I feel very much that this path, it leads to the end of mistakes, and it leads to the end of internal mistakes, the end of the defilements, and I'm very happy to continue to walk this path. So just want to thank the monastic community here and the lay community as well who support Abhayagiri. I'm very happy to continue this practice with all of you. So thank you.
Sadhu, thank you. Ajahn Sudhīro. To try that on for size. Only one more talk. The final speaker this evening, Tan Cittapālo.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Okay, so it's almost 11 o'clock. Only the diehards remain. I thought I would talk mainly about my experience in spending a year in Thailand. I've been back, I guess, about 6 months. As Rakkhito mentioned, we went over, flew there and flew back together. Spent a full year. And as he said, it's normal in our tradition for a monk's third year to spend that Vassa away, or to spend about a full year away. And I chose Thailand partly because I had been there twice before, as a backpacker. And so I'd spent already several months there, and I knew I really enjoyed the country and the culture. And but also, I thought it would be a good challenge as well, because as anyone who lives here or anywhere or is in any situation for any extended period of time will realize that it's quite easy to get into kind of ruts or certain kind of habitual patterns that can be difficult to shake up, and it can be easy to kind of fall into a state of complacency. So, yeah, so that was one of my main reasons for wanting to go, and it was kind of for both Rakkhito and myself. It ended up being a pretty unusual year away, and especially as an experience of Thailand, because right when we arrived, Thailand was really going into its lockdown for the first time since the pandemic started. So we started with doing a 2-week quarantine at a hotel in Bangkok, and ended up being, for me, I think for both of us, actually, it was really a good experience. What was really unique about it was that we were there for 2 weeks, and we only went outside, I think, a couple times to do like the testing. For some reason, we just went right outside the hotel for maybe 5-10 minutes, and then went back into our rooms. And every day food was brought to us, and there was a TV in the room, but I turned it on right when I arrived, just to try it. But then I was restrained enough to not turn it on until the very, very last day, right before leaving. So really kind of taking advantage of that solitude and that really kind of strange, those very unusual conditions where there's really nothing to do but meditate, and had some sutta books to read and practice chanting. So I found that was surprisingly helpful. And our rooms were almost right across the hallway from each other, and they were almost mirror images. But what was interesting was I had a room, one window facing one part of the city, and then he had a window facing the other part of the city. And there was a phone that we could call each other, and so maybe it was every other day or so we'd call, and I would get an update about what was going on outside his window, and I'd tell him about what's going on with my window. And it's amazing how when your day is so simple, and you probably people have experienced this, you actually can get pretty kind of starved of just stimulation. And I felt like that window was kind of like the connection to the outside world, and you start to every little detail of that image possible, you see and examine in a way that's just ridiculously kind of obsessive and minute, counting just like the little spinny fans on top of all of the roofs, and just noticing which ones spin kind of wonky and which ones really spin with the wind, and just stuff like that. But it was a good experience. So after that, I spent the first 8 months of my time in Thailand at Wat Pananachat, the first branch monastery of Wat Pah, which is and still is specifically for Western monks. And I found my time there was actually quite challenging overall. Even though the monastic form is pretty much the same, a lot of the details of the day are quite different. And say the general theme is discomfort. Anyone who's been to Thailand, and specifically Wat Pananachat, would know that's like, just an example of there's a lot more sitting on hard, usually cold surfaces, and you may not know this is possible, but you can actually get a callus on the top of your foot, and that's from sitting in this position that
that I'm sitting in now, the rest of the monks. Yeah, one of the things that was so challenging for me was adapting to the environment, because a lot of humidity and rain and hot temperature during the this time of year, the rains. In Nanachat, there's a lot of mold, and so everything's getting moldy. Kuti and all my possessions, my robes, and I had a lot of bodily dukkha. Yeah, the thing that was the worst was kind of had this plantar fasciitis that was quite painful and difficult to move around. Yeah, and there's a number of other things. And the forest itself, like the animals, or mainly the insects. There's an insane amount of ants at Wat Pah Nanachat. And at one point, so all of these things, there's a day when I was at my kuti, which was one of the further away kutis. And just really kind of suffering, and just all this stuff kind of going in my mind, and just really it kind of feeling inescapable. And at one point I just said to myself, it was just because when the suffering was really intense, in my face and unavoidable, and I just said to myself, it's like, oh, I am suffering. And it's one of the few times that I've actually been able to kind of really see that clearly, and actually just like kind of laugh at myself, because it was just, it was so ridiculous, and it was, in that moment, it was so clear that I was clearly the cause of my suffering. So after those 8 months at Nanachat, myself and Rakkhito, we got to do Tudong, which is wandering, with Ajahn Siri and Ajahn Sik and several other monks. That was definitely a pretty big highlight. And it definitely was challenging at times. It had its ups and downs, but I would summarize the whole experience as just quite magical. Yeah, some good stories, but I won't get into those here. At the end of the Tudong, we spent time at Daodam, which is it's not even officially like a monastery, I don't think, but it's right on the border of Thailand and Burma. And it's in a pretty good-sized national park, and it's one of the most pristine forests that's still available around in Thailand. And it has, it's almost like the Jungle Book. It has pretty much all the animals. Although no tigers have been seen, I don't think, in that area in a while, around the monastery, but yeah, you name it, elephants, bears. And it's actually just the whole monastery, and the way that Ajahn Siri Panyo, the way he runs the monastery is quite impressive, and it's really kind of in the spirit of, I think, the way that he found it, and the way that Langpa Pasano kind of what he created and what he left, because he was we have him to thank for Daodam, because he was the first monk kind of to go there and establish that. Yeah, so things are very just simple, rural, or rustic. And it's quite a unique experience. The jungle is just incredibly beautiful, lush, and so many incredible. The wildlife is just amazing. Definitely, I would say probably I spent 3 months there, and it's probably easily the highlight of my monastic career. But quite amazing. But also, I could see for an extended period of time it could be quite challenging living in a place like that. But potentially quite beneficial too. kind of interesting experiences I had was some encounters with kind of fear and dread, which I think is pretty normal when if you're not used to that kind of that jungle or that environment. When at night, any kind of sound, kind of your thoughts get going, and you imagine all the things that it could be. Probably some of the I think that I was can't talk. The most scared I've been in my life has probably been at Dhamma. Yeah, just like I remember one time just walking meditation at night. You have the candles going, but those don't really put off that much light. And then just hearing something like a mouse walk by through the bushes, but slowly the mind kind of goes. And there's a sutta that I remember that talks about how to deal with fear and dread when it arises. Or that the Buddha, the advice he gives is pretty simple. It's just to, whatever posture you're in, just to remain in that, and don't switch out of it until the fear and dread passes away. And I found that quite helpful. And another time that was probably the most extreme experience I had in terms of fear was it was in the middle of the night. I had heard from Ajahn Siri that one of the more dangerous things in the jungle can be elephants. And specifically it's the elephants that have been released in back to the jungle after captivity, because maybe from poor treatment or just holding a grudge, they can get really, really mean and quite dangerous if you stumble across them or just catch them in a bad mood. So that was really the only thing I was really kind of wary of. And so, the year before, there was apparently an elephant had actually visited all of the monks while they were sleeping, kind of on their platforms. So yeah, that's the other thing too, is a doubt of there's these bamboo platforms, like tables essentially, or benches in the jungle, and that's what the monks sleep on, just with a mosquito net. So very, very exposed. And yeah, so during the night, an elephant went up to all the various, or some of the monks, and just kind of looked at them and kind of kept going on. And then so this one night, it was around midnight, I hear this just incredible sound of roots snapping and bamboo breaking, and it was very close, and it sounded like almost like a tank just moving through the forest. And of course, my first thought was it's like, oh my God, like this is it, the elephant's coming. It's going right at me. And the fear that just hit was just like so incredibly gripping and strong. And without even thinking, really, the first thing I did was just started chanting Dhamma Sutta. And I was so afraid. I think I probably was messing up a lot of words, but it didn't really matter. Just saying something, probably to let the elephant know I was there. But I don't know if he was coming to kill me, but at least he would know I was awake. And started chanting, and after several seconds, the terrible sound, it stopped. And so I figured that the elephant, it probably heard me, and it just was kind of standing still, just kind of listening. And I chanted for a little while longer, and then still nothing. So eventually just kind of sat and meditated. And after a couple hours, still nothing. So eventually I got so tired, and I kind of lost interest. I got bored, and I got sleepy again. So the fear was gone. So I just went back to bed. And then found out the next day talking with Ajahn saying apparently actually what it was just trees that was falling. But it was a really big tree that fell very close, and it was knocking over other smaller trees. So yeah, actually later on I learned to be more afraid of falling trees than actually wildlife at Taotum. There seemed to be a disproportionate number of large trees falling around me. I don't know why. Within the 3 months I was there. Okay, so those are some stories. Yeah, Taotum's a great monastery. Definitely encourage people to go. Yeah, thank you.